Blech. Well, since we were revisiting Interview with the Vampire, and I hadn't seen Queen of the Damned since, I don't know, probably since like 2005 or so. I don't know when I last watched it. It's been a long time. Had to follow up with Queen of the Damned. So after Interview with the Vampire came out, I don't know if they ever tried to get the Vampire Lestat made, but they were trying to follow up the Interview with the Vampire, which was a huge success for years. And by that time, Tom Cruise had moved on. And eventually they got their act together, and Michael, Rymer, in 2002, I was 16 years old. Michael Rymer did the follow-up, or was supposed to be the follow-up. Lestat finds acceptance in the tattooed and pierced world, rekindling the desires of the all-powerful Akasha. That's one way to describe that movie. I gave it 3.5 stars because, like, I watched it. It's a cringe movie. It's cringe for so many reasons, but like I loved it because of how cringe it was. And I also loved it for like how it kind of really represents a subculture. It's so like, it so reminds me of like the mall goth hot topic subculture of the 2000s, you know, the dawn of like MySpace and social media. Like there's such a, it really captures that time and essence, and especially with like the special effects and some of the clothes and the sensibilities. And it's the idea that like, you know, dark gothic, you know, rave, like all those subcultures that I guess it all falls under goth, being like this really mainstream subculture movement within the alternative rock. And it reminds you how big alternative rock was at one point in time. And it feels like such a, it feels like that time has come and gone so quickly now. Stuart Townsend is in it. He was like, what else has Stuart Townsend been in besides League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? Right. He's in Aeon Flux. I mean, I get he's in Shooting Fish, and he's in a bunch of stuff. He's in a bunch of things, actually. But he had a brief, there was a brief moment where he was like, really, I think he's a British actor. Oh, no, he's Irish. He's Irish. Oh, and he's a director too. What has he directed? Maybe he got into directing, and that's why. No, he only directed one movie. He did not get into directing. He's most known for, I would say, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and Queen of the Damned. And that was like, those movies were made back to back. And he just had this moment where he was like, where he was hot to trot. Right. And, what was I trying to say here? And you had Aaliyah, who is so breathtakingly beautiful. I mean, and I'm, you know, she died before the movie came out. She died in the summer of 2001 in a tragic plane crash. She was so breathtakingly beautiful, so talented. I think she would have been bigger than Beyonce. She would have been bigger than all of them, man. And she just never got the chance. She would be as big as J-Lo. And she was a double threat, just like J-Lo was an actress and a performer. So too did Aaliyah. She did music, and she was also in Romeo Must Die. Like she had a really bright future ahead of her. I didn't know Roland S. Howard is in this movie. For those who don't know, Roland S. Howard, oh my God, he acted in a lot of movies. He's in Wings of Desire too. I didn't realize that. He is the guitar player from The Birthday Party, Nick Cave's band before he started Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. But I didn't realize I got to go back and see who he was in this movie. You also have Marguerite Moreau, who is so pretty and another beautiful actress that I always liked. She's in the Mighty Ducks movies, and she's also in Wet Hot American Summer, and she's also in Queen of the Damned. She had a bustling career. She's in a bunch of stuff. But she's also in this movie. And yeah, this movie is very goofy. It is so utterly goofy. It does not age well, but it is a guilty pleasure cringe watch for sure. And so basically what happens is this movie sort of combines elements from the Vampire Lestat and the third book, Queen of the Damned. So Akasha, played by Aaliyah, she's the mother of all vampires. Okay. And she's the first vampire. She fuses with an ancient demon and becomes a vampire, and she gives birth to all the vampires. Lestat's maker is actually an alchemist named Magnus. I remember this from reading the book, The Vampire Lestat. They skip all that. They cut all that out, and instead it's Marius, another ancient vampire that's sort of the assistant disciple of Akasha, becomes his maker. Louis is not in the movie at all, or if he is, maybe Bruce Spence is in the movie, which I didn't realize. And also you have Vincent Pérez, who plays Ash in The Crow City of Angels. He plays Marius in this movie. In fact, let's see if anybody comes up as you have David Tabbelt. He's in a bunch of Pandora is in it. So all these are from the books. You have Armand. Oh, so Armand is it? Armand was recast. How about that? Vampire guitarist. Okay, so Roland S. Howard is in the band. That's who he's in the band for the Vampire Lestat. That's interesting. So Armand is in this movie, but he's such a secondary character. Like they don't even like mention him by name really. That's so interesting. Yeah, Jonathan Davis, the guy from Korn, he has like a cameo as a scalper, which I totally like recognize. Like, why are they making so much emphasis on this scalper? What was funny, the funniest part of this movie of all is the idea like how like where music was at the time, that you could be that big as a musician and not have ever performed a concert, because the Vampire Lestat is set to perform his first concert ever in this movie. And he ends up, vampires are supposed to be, secretive, as we just talked about. And he's basically coming out as a vampire to the world, and it's making all the other vampires angry. And so, it's actually the plot structure, like the premise is actually a really great premise. The idea of a vampire becoming a rock star and coming out to the world and making all the other vampires angry about it, and writing about his life that he's lived, his ancient life. That's actually really fucking cool, right? In this case, it's the sound of a new metal band that makes Lestat rise from his slumber. And he basically takes over as their lead singer. Okay. And they get international success without ever having played a concert, just from on album sales. And he gets groupies every night, and he eats the groupies. I mean, it's just like, there's so much there for like a much better movie than what Queen of the Damned actually turns out to be. And the problem is that they're shoehorning two different ideas. Then of course his music wakes up Akasha, and she takes him on as her new king. And when he drinks her blood, he can walk in the sun, and all the other vampires that take on Akasha at the end. And it's very goofy, but it is really, really, it's fun. And there's just too much going on. It's a mess. The other element that's really interesting is the idea that they could hold a concert in Death Valley, and that the crowd would be that big for such a niche, even like new metal, goth, whatever the hell it's supposed to be. I don't know. It's very goofy, but I love it. I do love it. I love it because it is so goofy. The production here, actually, it says, as the rights to the novels would revert to Anne Rice at the end of 2000, initial story meetings to adapt one or both of the remaining Vampire Chronicles began. So they had the rights to the first 3 books. So they basically decided, hey, let's fuse these 2 books into one movie to save money and to retain the rights for a little bit longer, because the Vampire Lestat was considered too broad and episodic for a 2-hour feature film. So the initial beginnings of the Vampire Lestat get turned into, because they, his mother and his lover, Nicholas, are both left out of the movie entirely, right? So the second half of this movie, or most of the movie, is really just the Queen of the Damned, with a little bit of Vampire Lestat at the beginning. The key factors that the entire Vampire contract terminates in the year 2000. All the properties revert to me at that time unless production commences. Before then, I don't think it's possible for Warner Brothers to develop anything in the amount of time. They have not been receptive to me or to my ideas at all. So Anne Rice was not happy. And she eventually, I felt snubbed and hurt to have not been bothered and have not bothered to approach them since. So Anne Rice thought that the Queen of the Damned was a doomed project. It was an interesting idea, like the Queen of the Vampires and the first vampire, and like that vampire, she drinks blood, and she can emoliate vampires at like a turn of a hat. The vampire superpowered effects, like super speed, none of it works. None of it aged well. I don't know. So it's funny how Aaliyah, she ends up kind of being like like a James Dean, except James Dean made 3 movies. Aaliyah only made 2, and this was one of them. And so for that reason, it's great because Aaliyah is great. Aaliyah's performance is great, and they kind of make her voice a little bit more demonish, which is great. I man, it's good. It's good. Like, what can I say? Like, what can I say? It is good. Like in that way, her performance at least. But the movie itself is a trash fire, but a really fun trash fire. You just got to go with it. You got to go into this movie and you just got to roll with it and just and apparently I didn't realize this, so it makes sense. So Jonathan Davis from Korn also doubled as the singing voice for Lestat, which makes a lot of sense. So So you had a lot of cameos, but it's interesting that what's his face from the birthday parties in this movie. That's noteworthy in and of itself. I didn't realize that. Roland S. Howard, who also penned one of my favorite haunting songs of all time called "Shivers" by the Boys Next Door. He was also in the Boys Next Door too. I forget that as well. All right. Any case.